So we do have a pretty large PowerPoint to go through, and we only have 1 hour. So I really want to try to get through everything, especially what all you ladies are interested in trying to learn about today or just receive more information on. So we're going to get going. If you could try to hold your questions at the end. Camille and I, as we're presenting, we may ask if you have any questions, it's totally okay. But we do want to get to questions at the end just in case we didn't cover something, or of course, if you have a question. So we're going to get on with it. We are going to move right into resumes. So for the most part, I believe everyone understands what a resume is. I do want to discuss how typically it is 1 page. I know in the past, when I was quite a bit younger, that was never really taught or discussed. So understanding that now, it's very important to try to keep it to 1 page. Now, and knowing that some of us have 15, 20 years of work experience. I myself have been in the financial industry for 16 years, going on 17. You typically want to keep your resume to at least 10 years of your work history, which you can, in all honesty, you can fit it on 1 page. I'm just reading through to make sure I go over everything. So it's always a best practice and is required to provide a resume when you do submit a job application. For the most part, I believe we all know that and understand that, being that we've all worked in the past, we have quite a bit of work history under our belts. But yes, definitely always provide a resume in addition to the job application when filling out or looking for jobs. I'm going to move on to the next page and discuss why you need a resume. It is one of the most important pieces of your job application. Yes, your job application will list out personal information, your previous work history, as well as your resume, but your resume is almost like your first impression. It will sell who you are and possibly catch the eye of the hiring manager or the recruiter and say, wow, they took their time to fill this out. It matches what we're looking for. Let me take a look at this and read it over. A little bit longer than 20 seconds. It is used as a marketing tool, so you're selling yourself. And I know some people out there may think, well, I don't really like talking about myself. It's conceited, or I don't want to come off as being conceited, but that's what you're doing. You have to sell yourself to whatever company that you're applying for to say, hey, I'm the best fit candidate. You should choose me. And that your resume should be able to explain that. You will use a resume, of course, to attain a new job. You want to stand out amongst other applicants and grab the eyes of the recruiter. So we are going to go into a did you know. So the initial amount of time an employer takes to review a resume is typically between 5 to 7 seconds. And to skim through it or read through it, it's 15 to 45 seconds. Now, to me, when I think about that, I think, oh, how rude. How could you not take time to look at my resume that I spent probably over an hour to create? That's the reality. I can tell you, me as an interviewer I've processed many interviews, I do like to take my time to read the resume, but there are times where I have to briefly read over it because I have 10 other people I need to interview that was promised an hour or 30 minutes of my time. So consider placing all relevant information at the beginning. Use an opening statement. Opening statements are 2 to 3 sentences that explain why you're seeking that particular job or position, as well as building on some of your strengths. We will go into how to write a good opening statement later on in the deck. You always want to get to the point quickly and input important information. You don't need to add any fluff in your resume whatsoever. So what Camille and I would like to do is go through a short activity, and it's called Think Like a Hiring Manager. So what we're gonna do is ask that you put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager to help you decide what information to include on your resume and what not to. When you put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager, think about what comes to mind first. What are you thinking you want from this individual that you're interviewing? And if there's any personal experiences that anyone would like to share right now, I'd love to discuss them. Let me take a look here. So when thinking about what you would do in interviewing somebody are the most important pieces to bring up. Camille mentioned earlier when her and I were prepping for this is maybe you can think about it this way. If you were to ask somebody to come into your home to clean it, what qualities would you look for in that individual, because you're allowing them inside your home, your private area, as well as walk around all of your house and say, you know, clean up your stuff. What's one of the first things that you would want to see from somebody that you're interviewing? And we can, if anyone would like to just take yourself off mute if you want to make any suggestions, and we could go from there.
Hi, Janie. I'd want to know the person's references and how long they had been cleaning homes.
Okay.
Okay.
Look, Mecca said that she wants someone who's trustworthy.
Yes.
Good. I think for me, I want someone that looks apart, and with the job experience, also they look like they can do the job.
Yes, absolutely.
Presence.
So, thank you, ladies, for volunteering. So references, I know that was mentioned, definitely for cleaning a home. Currently in today's world, references aren't really necessary on a resume. They may be asked of you on a job application, which are two totally different things. And it's definitely necessary to have those references, but not on your resume. And you want to try to have good professional references versus your best friend. Although, you know, your best friend's gonna have your back and say amazing things about you, having professional references, maybe those that you know from nonprofit organizations to represent you as a reference, that would be best fit. Someone mentioned trustworthy, definitely. When you are in an interview, especially with Camille and I coming from fraud, we're looking for people that are lying to us. We need to detect that type of information, and we want to know, because we don't want individuals or anybody working for us that we cannot trust. So don't ever, like I said earlier, put fluff into your resume, lie. We understand that there may be times where in your resume you may think, well, I worked for the company for a year and a half, but I know it would look so much better if it was 2 or 2.5 or 3. We will find out at some point. Background checks are processed. It's just better to put what is factual on your resumes in order to represent yourself in a positive manner. Camille, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that you covered that brilliantly, you know, just making sure that we wanted to have this exercise so that you could think from the perspective of someone who's conducting an interview, and those things or qualities that are most important to you to make a good decision as if this person is going to be a good fit. I think that Simone had mentioned, you know, they need to look the part. That's absolutely true, because what we see is typically how we make the assumption of, is this going to be a good fit? You know, if you're hiring someone to come in and trusting them to clean your house, if they came to you for an interview looking like they slept in a dumpster last night, you're probably gonna say, you know, it's a no right now. I'm gonna continue to interview other candidates. So that's really critical as far as, you know, being clear on what you're looking for and the qualities that are going to help set you up for the interviewer to be compelled to say, yes, I want this person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Camille.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that. So we're going to talk about types of resumes. I know a lot of you brought up that you're trying to get back into the workforce, and explain why you were out for so long, or highlight what your strengths are in a particular position. So this is what we're going to discuss here. So there are different types of resumes. We have a chronological, and then we'll talk about another in the next 2 slides. So a chronological resume is pretty much a listing of your current employer all the way down to the last 10 years of your work history. You don't want to start with what you did 10 years ago. You want to start with what you're doing now, all the way down to at least the last 10 years of your work history. The chronological resume is the fastest and easiest to read, especially when we have a lot of folks to interview and we're trying to get through that by also respecting your time and not having you wait hours upon hours for an interview when we told you we were going to interview 2 hours ago. It is preferred by most employers, but keep in mind that there's no real rule about what type of resume an employer requires. It's your resume, you make it as you seem fit, but we're just offering the advice on what is preferred in today's day and age. The advantages and disadvantages of a chronological resume. So interviewers are most familiar with it. It's easy to read. It shows your stable work history. And then it's structured by dates, companies, skills, and titles. The disadvantages is it draws attention to employer gaps and skill areas that are difficult to highlight. So I'm going to show you an example of a chronological resume. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Yeah.
Jamie, do you mind if we go back to the previous slide? Just want to touch on one of the disadvantages. So, of course, the context that we take from the word disadvantages is that it's something bad. Not necessarily the case. This would give you an opportunity where it says draws attention to employer gaps. This would just give you an opportunity to speak to that, just have your credible answer as if I returned to school or I was taking care of a family member, just being honest and transparent to speak to those gaps. Because there, especially now, we can honestly say in this year, 2020, there have been many competing outside impacts that we have no control over. So there may be a legitimate reason why you had those employer gaps. I returned to school, got married, had a life-changing event, had children. And as long as you're prepared to speak to them in a very honest and transparent approach, then it's not necessarily a disadvantage, but it just gives you an opportunity to tell your story.
Mm-hmm. And it's okay to have those gaps. You just have to be ready and willing to explain why.
Right.
All right, so the chronological resume example, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with it. I'm going to try to share. I hope you guys can see it clearly. We'll do our best. So here it just shows quickly, we have the objective statement. You'll list out your personal information here at the top, your employment experience, education, community service. Here you can put rewards and recognitions, things like that. We will provide this to you so you guys can go back and reference it if you ever need to also. And then here I put, should references be listed? I touched on this a little bit earlier. References aren't necessary to put on the resume. Most of the time you can put that on the job application. So that allows the room on your one-page resume for more information, such as additional work history, your education, community service that you're involved in, military, anything like that.
And to touch upon one of the components of the personal information, so it's email address. As an interviewer, I'm guilty of looking at that, and sometimes I may create some sort of bias if it's not a professional email address. So as much as you love, Sweet Peach 66 at yahoo.com, for a resume, you may want to consider, like a professionally driven email address. Like mine is and you're probably going to judge me, but I actually do have a Hotmail email address from years and years ago, but it's just my name. It's just CamilleWhite@hotmail.com. And that's one that I use on my resumes.
Yes. I can tell you we've had some good laughs looking at individuals' emails that they chose to put on their resume that wasn't very professional.
Right.
And alluded to your personal life.
Right. You may be a hot girl for life, but you don't necessarily want your employer to get some sort of perception about you that's unfairly supported.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to go into a functional resume. And I know most of you, not most of you, but some of you brought up earlier, how are you going to create a resume when you've been out of work or you have so many skills, but you don't necessarily, you have so many large gaps, this is what the type of resume that you want. So a functional resume showcases skills and expertise rather than chronological work history. I will go into an example as well. This is for those who are concerned about job hopping in your work history. Of course, you may say, hey, I'm not job hopping, I'm trying to move careers, or you may have been hired with an employer that just was horrible. And that's absolutely okay, because we're not here to act like it doesn't happen. It happens. So you just have to really be willing to tell a compelling story. For those of you who are changing careers, a functional resume is going to be better fit than the chronological. The advantages here is it allows you to emphasize on your professional growth. It's good for those who have gaps in employment or recently graduated. It is structured by your skills and not necessarily your employment history. There are disadvantages, but again, like Camille mentioned, it's not something bad, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Hiring managers will notice those gaps, be willing to talk about it. Some job boards don't accept them, such as monster.com. So if you're, out there doing your daily routine, applying for jobs, some of them don't accept those functional resumes. So you may have to tweak it into a chronological one. I'm going to move into the example to show you the difference between the chronological and the functional. So here you can see we have the same personal information, we have the objective statement, and then the qualification highlights. So say you're applying for a job in project management. You can put all of your qualification highlights here, your professional skills, and list out how you gain those professional skills. You're a project manager here. And then employment history, you may not need this category if it's already covered in the professional skills and your qualification highlights above. What's also really good, and I can tell you in all honesty, I use it myself all the time, Google. If you have internet access, use it. Say, what is a functional resume? How do I write a great functional resume? You literally can Google that and you will have so much help. It's out there, you just have to take the time to do the research and grab what it is that you need in order to create a really, really well-written resume. So we're going to go into speaking about sections of a resume, the particular sections, such as the objective statement, and things like that. So we have many different areas of a resume, and you probably are looking at this thinking, how the heck am I going to get this on one page? I do that when I write my own personal resume. I just recently was moved into a new position, and I had to go back a couple months ago and rewrite my resume, and I sat there for quite some times, spending at least 2 hours rewriting my resume, which I hadn't had to rewrite for over 3.5 years. So these are all different areas of a resume. Not all may be on one, but there are some that are definitely necessary. So we'll go into that now. So let's talk about the header. So what should go into a header? What should you include? Of course, your name, your address. Some folks may say that an address isn't necessary on a resume. I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I wouldn't say it's not a bad idea to put it on there. I just think it makes it look very professional. If you're not comfortable with sharing your physical address, you can always put the city that you live in, the state, and the zip code. You don't want to appear as if you're trying to hide information. Your professionally named email address, like we discussed earlier, your telephone number, of course. It's best to put at the header or at the top of the page. These here are just examples showing how your header can look if you use that particular template, but also what to include. Now let's talk about the career objective. This is typically 2 to 3 sentences tailored to the job you are applying for. It is probably the hardest 2 to 3 sentences I've ever had to come up with in my life, but you can do it. I promise. It will state who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. So you could be an upbeat professional in the financial industry for 20 plus years seeking a job in project management. Simple enough, but when you get there, you may beat yourself up thinking, how am I going to make this sound so well in 2 to 3 sentences? You do not want to keep it long because it may not be right, in all honesty. It will include your employment career goals, and you can also include what that is within the next 3 years. I know there are some employers, I had a little visitor, some employers that will ask you, what's your plan? What's your plan in 5 years? I personally don't like that question. I'm just the type of individual, I like to live day by day. I don't want to think 5 years out and make myself age that much. Maybe 2 years, sure. But if you like it and you want to put that on there, absolutely, I will love to listen to that or read that on your resume. Focus on particular skills and experiences that are related to that job that you are applying for. And highlight your qualifications. Be specific. I also put in an example here that you can go back and reference. Google again. If you just Google how to write a professional career objective on my resume, you'll have so many areas of opportunity to help you with that. And it's really just taking the time to do it. You're not going to get there in 10 minutes. Next, the next step on a resume after the objective should be something about either your skills, which we will go into, or your employment history. So what is considered your employment history? Full-time jobs, part-time, seasonal jobs, put that on your resume. We want to know what you've done. We want to know what type of experience you have. Just because it was seasonal does not make it bad. Put it on your resume. Temporary agencies, temporary jobs, those are completely fine to put on there as well. Self-employment, internships, anything that will explain the type of skills that you have to offer to that company, put that on your resume. Properly list out your working experience. So you want to list it out in a well-fashioned order so that when I look at this resume, I know, okay, Jamie works at Barclays. She's a process transformation analyst, and she's been there for this long, and it's in Las Vegas, Nevada. So you want to also list, of course, the position that you held for that particular company. Now, listing out those responsibilities, I think that's where it gets a little tricky for some folks. What I tend to see often on resumes is they will have their chronological history, for example, listed out, work history, but then they'll have 2 bullets for one job, 3 bullets for the next job, 10 bullets for another job. It's really important to keep it the same. So put 3 bullets for each job. You can definitely have done so much more at a particular job. Maybe you were responsible for more. Maybe you were a manager and you're responsible for not only yourself, but 18 to 15 other people. You can definitely use this as ammo in your interview. Go into your interview to leave talking points with whoever may be interviewing you. Something that I may not have read on your resume, and speak to that. Put 3 major bullets and leave it at that. Even 2 are fine. 2 to 3 bullets, that's all you need. Speak about yourself within your resume, but you want to do it in what's called first person implied. So you don't want to talk about I, my, me. It may come off as if you're not a team player, and you definitely want to try to be a team player as much as possible if you're working with groups or within large companies. You want to start each line with an action verb. So you executed professional relationships, you built professional relationships, you addressed concerns with peers when in disagreements, anything like that. It shows that you are taking action or took action on what was expected of you in that particular position. So think of it as speaking in present tense if currently employed, and then past tense if no longer employed. Listing out your education. This was something that I didn't know. Coming out of high school, I had no idea how to put that on my resume. I wish they would have taught me that. I eventually figured it out. So it's pretty simple. Name of the institution, and include the city and state. We'd like to know where you graduated. You may live in Nevada, but now you're in New Jersey. It'll be a good topic of conversation while you're in your interview. The name of your degree or major, the graduation date or expected date. And if your GPA was strong, put it on there, boast about yourself, say, because to me as an interviewer that says, wow, they really take time to study, understand, and focus on what the project at hand is, regardless of what that may be. What is considered education? Degrees, diplomas, certificates, training programs, GEDs. Don't be embarrassed to say that you have a GED. When I read that, I think, well, they may not have gotten their diploma through an accredited high school, but they took their time to make sure that they got some form of general education. And that to me says you were dedicated to some type of schooling to say, I have to wake up, I have to study for this, I have to get it done. So there are other sections of the resume, volunteer experience, honors, awards, and recognitions. It's always important to put that. And it's a good topic of conversation. You could have won Customer Service of the Year awards. You could have military experience. You could be a professional member of some sort of society within the Americas. Put that on there, and it's usually towards the bottom after you've listed out your employment history. I put a little example here to show education, how they listed that out, as well as their honors and awards. All right, I think Camille's gonna take over from here. You ready, Camille? I'm sure
Yes,
you may be tired of hearing my voice.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamie. So I'm going to talk to you guys about writing your resume. So if you think about the resume in the simplest of terms, this is basically a hard copy commercial for your brand, which is you. So this person doesn't have the line of sight to know how awesome and amazing and spectacular you are. And so they're basically looking at your commercial that just happens to be in a resume format or style. So when we talk about the format and style, you want to use a design layout that is easy to read. As Jamie had mentioned previously, interviewers spend very little time in going through, especially if they have a large volume of resumes that have to be reviewed. So they're going to instantly go to the ones that draw their eye. So, but you don't have to get all fancy and use colorful script and fancy fonts, or, you know, put pictures of you winning an award or anything like that, but just keep it professional, crisp, clean, concise. You only want to use 1 or 2 fonts and 1 or 2 text sizes, because the reason for that is it can get distracting. Your eye is going to go to what stands out for you. So you can see in the example that Jamie has provided on the side, you know, the professional experience is a little bit larger font than the rest of the bullets. So my eye is immediately going to go to that. Keep it in an easy to read format. Try to keep it to 1 page because, as we said, you may only have 10 to 30 seconds to make a good impression. There are many places where you can gain access to resume templates. You can go to the library, Microsoft Word, the internet, Google. You can make that your best friend, and also YouTube. There are many videos and resources out there on YouTube. Like I probably could learn how to build a rocket ship by a video that's on YouTube, because there's so much volume of information and resources that are out there. So we'll move into the resume do's and don'ts, some things to consider as you're preparing your resume. Before I get into those, you know, some folks have made some commentary around, you know, I haven't updated my resume for quite some time. This is something that you owe to yourself. You should try to get into a recurring cadence of updating it on a cadence that feels comfortable for you. So for me, I have you can't see it, but I have a vision board and a calendar that's in front of me. So the first day of every quarter, I have a note on there for me to refresh my resume. There may not be any changes on it, but you never know, at the drop of a dime, your situation could change and you may need to re-enter the workforce, or as one of the participants on this said, you know, I was furloughed. So the situation was outside of her control, but now she needs to be prepared to get back into the workforce. So for some do's and don'ts, anything that I can put my hands around as a tangible example of supporting evidence. So numbers, percentages, dollar amounts, things that you saved, how it contributed to the bottom line of the business that you were working in. So, you know, I had a great idea to implement this robotics plan, and it saved the company $50,000 in 2020. That's a really good example of something that an interviewer can get their mind around. Keep the resume easy to read. Try to keep it to one page. Best practice is, of course, to include the last 10 years of your work history. 2 pages is acceptable, but again, you want to get and capture the interviewer's attention from page 1, and make sure that it's neatly typed with a cover letter, a neatly typed cover letter with your resume. And we'll get a little bit more into cover letters further on. Don't use the pronouns such as I, me, and my. It's implied. We know that this resume is directed for you. It was written for you. So you don't necessarily have to say I implemented, I developed, I managed. Don't say or put in the resume that references are available upon request. If references are requested as part of the posting that you're applying for, more than likely it will be included in the application portion of that. Don't clutter it with non-essential information, fluff, anything like that. Don't make misrepresentations. In other words, don't lie. So Jamie and I both work in the fraud detection space, and so we're looking for those red flags. You know, if someone says, I saved $8.27 gazillion with an idea that I had in March of 2020, immediately my instinct is going to say, okay, so we were impacted by COVID. I'm really interested to know what that great idea was that you had. And don't mention your current or previous salary, because that's another conversation. That's assuming that, you know, I'm getting this job, they're going to tell me yes, and they need to know my value so that they can either meet or beat it. So you don't want to get into that conversation in the early stages of the interview process.
Mm-hmm. And also I'd like to add too is don't be pushy. You know, your interview may have went amazing and you feel so good about it and you're in there and the interviewer may be wrapping up. Don't say, hey, did I get the position? Are you going to call me tomorrow? Was I the best interview you ever had? Those type of questions, although you may want to know the answer, it's kind of awkward for us because we're not going to necessarily be like, well, that was the worst interview I ever had in my life. So just try not to be pushy. You can definitely ask questions, and you should, and say, when can I look forward to I will hear back from you. Those type of comments are totally okay, but saying, you know, like, did I get the job? Are you going to tell me today? No, please don't do that.
Right. So the next one is, do resumes have hidden messages? They absolutely do. You know, we're all human, so our brains are wired a certain way where we pick up on certain things and they translate into something else, like a perception. So one of the hidden messages in your resume could be, is it neat? Is it well organized? Is it free from any errors or mistakes? And does it have a professional appearance? And the hidden message that it says about you is that you are neat, you are well organized, you pay attention to detail, and that you're careful and competent. And now some resume tips to remember. So again, with a resume, there's no hard and fast rule about, you know, what it is. Just from working in the industry and working in professional capacity, we are sharing some of the best practices or tips that we know have resulted in successfully being asked to be offered a job with an organization. And these are some interviewing rules as well. You know, resumes and interviews are very subjective, and it could come down to the culture of the business that you're applying to or the interviewer themselves. So there are no absolute hard and fast rules regarding the format of the resume that you should use. It must target the position you're applying for. And in saying that, you know, especially we all know that looking for a job is a full-time job. And so you may want to increase the volume of the applications that you're completing and to have the associated resumes to go along with it. But if you're applying for a job in the food service industry and everything that you're talking about is related to the financial industry, we're unable to connect the dots and see how you would be the best fit for that position. Dress and appear professional. So this is kind of a tricky one. And you know, I always would recommend to someone, don't immediately go out and buy a whole new wardrobe if you've been scheduled an interview. I am a huge shopper at Walmart, I will admit, and they have a great selection of professional attire that you can use. I've gotten many cardigan sweaters from there. And if you keep it basic and just clean and concise, a black pair of slacks or a black skirt that is not midway up your thigh, but you know, comes to a couple of inches above your knees, and a white shirt or blouse. Typically, you can't go wrong if you just keep that very professional and clean palette. Don't forget to, so one thing that I wanted to add as far as dressing and appearing professional for your interview, if you wear it to bed, the beach, or the club, you probably don't want to wear it to an interview. Don't forget to include your skills and your relevant work experiences. It's okay not to put everything, you throw the kitchen sink at your resume and put so much information, because you want to have some topics that you can talk about. Most interviewers will ask questions based on the information that you provided on your resume. It's okay to have a list to reference what you'd like to discuss during the interview. So again, this is subjective. Me as an interviewer, it doesn't bother me or distract me if a candidate comes in with a notebook or a portfolio or a briefcase, and I know that they're going to be taking some notes or just to keep their mind on the items that they want to discuss. Because we all know that interviews, just like anything else, it's a skill and it's something that has to be practiced and repeatedly in order for you to feel comfortable in doing it well. And an interview, I mean, let's just be honest, an interview is an overwhelming, stressful situation that's artificial. So, you know, you've got a lot of things going through your head and you may have all these brilliant questions that you're going to ask and these things that you want to touch upon. And as soon as you get into the interview and it gets started, everything, your mind just goes blank. So it's definitely okay to have those reference items available for you to discuss. I would not recommend using the notes function on your phone because it can lead the interviewer to think that you're not paying attention and that you're scrolling through your social media. So good rule of thumb is to put your phone on silent and put it away so you won't be tempted to be distracted by it. Bring or provide multiple copies of your resume to the interview and be ready to provide it to the hiring manager or whoever is conducting the interview. And remember, a resume is just like life. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression. So your resume is your commercial for your brand and the brand being you. And what is a cover letter? So a cover letter it's basically a letter of introduction. It's going to accompany your resume and it shouldn't repeat what's already stated in your resume. But it should include who you are, what's the best way to contact you, which job you're applying for, how you found out about it, what you're interested in, what you are interested in and enthusiastic about this job or the company, what relevant experience or transferable skills make you the best candidate, that you would like an interview or that you look forward to an interview, and show that you are grateful for being considered. And I believe Jamie's going to show an example of what a cover letter looks like and should include.
Okay. Just to show you real quick. It shows here how you have your contact information. So pretty much the same as the heading or the header of your resume. And then once this is over, if you guys want to take a look at it, you can read the example. But again, this is something where you can Google how to write a cover letter. There's so many different options, pieces of information out there, and you can pick that apart and just put that into your own personal cover letter.
And surprisingly enough, another resource where you can get tips and advice on cover letters and resumes is, I don't know if anyone is familiar with Pinterest. I typically look for that just to look at recipes and how to make my house cute, but there are, I was able to find that example of cover letters and resumes because for my particular situation, I was completely changing industries. So I had went from the customer service industry to the financial industry, and I was looking for some tips in how I can make my resume or cover letter stand out in a pool of candidates who I know more than likely had more experience than me in the financial industry. So now we'll talk about the online job search and application process. So some tips for this process: make sure that you read the job descriptions thoroughly to fully understand what you may be signing up for. Create an original cover letter and identify some of the keywords that you can integrate into your resume. Make sure that everything is free of any errors or mistakes. Reread it, proofread it, have a friend proofread it and look over it for you. Maintain a separate cover letter and resume for each application that you submit. Clean up your online profiles. So this is critical. You know, potential employers do look on social media platforms to see if some of the posts that you have might not be in alignment with their culture. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, to see if they could see you being a part of their organization. So that may be a good time to just go through and see some of the posts that you have, increase the security platforms on there. But just know that potentially anything that you put out on the World Wide Web is free for anybody to look at. Mm-hmm. Proofread and review all the information that you have included before submitting it. Be prepared to potentially take a pre-employment assessment test for some organizations. And if you're having any trouble completing the process, look for any type of help buttons or contact us or links that could help you through the process. Some information that you're going to need is, of course, your personal information, your name, address, phone number, eligibility to work in the U.S., any work certificate if underage, so on and so forth. Be prepared to support your education with documented evidence such as degrees or certificates, a diploma. The position that you're applying for, make sure to include like the job title, the days and hours you're available to work, start date. In your employment history, you may be asked as part of a background check to provide previous employers' names, addresses, contacts, dates of employment, so on and so forth. With the references, again, back to what Jamie had mentioned previously, you want to have 3 professional references that you can count on, that you know that they'll be a good advocate for you. And the good news is, if you've already typed and completed your resume, most of the information is already contained in there and it will be readily available in order for you to fill out the job application. And for the job search process, prepare yourself. So perform a self-assessment and or a typing test on some of the free sites that are available to do this online, especially if you're seeking employment like from an administrative perspective or in an office environment. Prepare any tools you may need, such as pen and paper, calculator. Identify your target job and industry and do your research. Be clear on what you're potentially getting yourself into. Research the company, because some interviewers, as part of the interview process, may ask you, well, what can you tell me about our company and why do you want to be a part of this? Are you familiar with our culture or our expectations? So in conducting the job search, create your job search goals and expectations and be very clear on what that is. Maintain an effective approach, evaluate your job search. Sometimes, you know, as I've mentioned previously, looking for a job can become a full-time job and it can be overwhelming and stressful, but it's normal. Take time to relax, evaluate what you're doing, and to pinpoint any possible downfalls or pitfalls that you want to try to avoid. And specific job search activities. So submitting your application and resume, preparing your resume for each application. So with that, when I was in the jobs, when I relocated from Georgia to Las Vegas, I prepared a couple of different resumes for the different industries that I was going to be applying for. So I had Camille White customer service, Camille White financial institution, Camille White retail, so that I could tailor the specific resume for whichever job that I was looking for. But I was putting them out there everywhere. Use your Career Center resources within your community. Have a friend do a mock interview with you to see how it feels, and they can pinpoint, a true friend is going to pinpoint, did you know that you say 37 times? Or, you know, when you get nervous, you have this giggle that you say in between each word, and it's kind of distracting. So a true friend is going to help you along in that. Create a daily routine for each day of the week. So in the morning on Monday, I'm going to do an employee search. In the afternoon, I'm going to follow up, or I'm going to edit my cover letter or resume. In the morning on Tuesday, I'm going to do some mock interviews with my best friend. And pick a routine that works specifically for you so that you can be successful when job searching. There's no right or wrong routine. And don't forget, fine tune your resume. You want to tailor it specifically to each employer that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a role in the food service industry, you probably don't want to send a resume that's related to the financial industry. Going back to having a friend or a family member help you practice. Interviewing is a skill just like anything else, and practice may not make perfect, but it'll make you feel more comfortable. Consider an internship or an apprenticeship. Invest in appropriate job interviewing attire. Currently, our organization, being in experiencing the impacts of COVID-19, we've moved to doing interviews virtually to protect the health and safety of both the interviewer and the candidate. So, you know, you're able to do it from home, and we're going to see from the neck up, the shoulders up. So if you just invest in a simple white shirt or a simple black shirt that's going to read well in the virtual interview, that's fine. But you don't have to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe. And there are many organizations within the community, i.e. Dress for Success, which will help you in putting your interview attire together. Clean up all your digital dirt that you may have on social media, because whether you like it or not, employers, they absolutely do look into that. Don't curse or use profane or inappropriate language in the interview. And you don't have to explain your nervousness. We get it. It's an overwhelming, artificial thing that we don't do every single day. So you don't have to explain your nervousness. And when you focus on that, sometimes that makes you even more nervous because you're focusing on it. What you think about, you bring about. So if you just think that I'm going to go in here and I'm going to crush this interview, that's what you're focusing on, not the fact that I'm nervous and I've got sweat from my armpit down to my toes. And always have or ask questions during the interview, and especially at the end of the interview. That's an opportunity for you. You've got someone who's in that industry that you're trying to get in. So you've got their undivided attention, and they'll be able to answer any questions that you have, particularly, you know, what can I expect day to day in my role as an analyst in this company? What's the culture like in the company? What are some of the struggles that the company has had? In recent interviews that I've conducted, some of the questions that the candidates asked me were in relation to COVID-19 and how our business pivoted so that we can make sure that the business was able to continue, but that our colleagues, first and foremost, were safe and healthy. And, You always have options. You can further your education or improve your skill set by trying to get a certificate. Some of these services are free within the community. Make use of free career and personal development workshops to improve your skills. You can also seek part-time jobs or volunteer related to your career passion, to include seasonal work. You know, we're coming up on what traditionally was the peak holiday season, but it's probably going to look a little bit differently this year because 2020. But there may be some seasonal opportunities, and it's always okay to take those opportunities because that gives you a chance to improve your skill set. Consider taking computer classes if you're not tech savvy. And I mentioned seasonal work. That also gives you an opportunity to meet people that you can network with. They may have a line of sight of permanent work that's available. And travel and learn, of course, considering your budget. And your goals and expectations. So it's never in anyone's wheelhouse to try to set themselves up for failure, but there is the chance that it could happen. And failure looks different for each person. A failure for one person may be, oh, they told me no. So I can honestly disclose that I've been told no a couple of times, but I'm still here today. And what that does, failure for me, it fuels me to do better, to do more, to go further. So if you do fail, because at some point we all will, just make sure that you get back up. There is a job out there, but you also have to remember that there is competition. Some companies may only have one position that's available and posted. And I have to think in my mind, there potentially could be someone who's going to interview better than me, who's going to have more experience than me, whose resume looks better than mine. So there's that potential that it could be a no, not now for me, but that's not going to stop me from continuing on. It could take up to 4 to 6 months before you receive an offer. So be prepared for this as well. And if you can clearly picture the job you want, then you'll likely be more successful. What you think about, you bring about. So if you think, I'm going to secure this employment, I'm going to have this job, I'm going to be starting in the 4th quarter of this year, the more you think about it, your actions will drive you to moving closer to meeting that goal. And looking for a job is wholeheartedly a job in itself. It's hard work. And I won't read through all of these, but these are some necessary skills needed in 2020 and beyond. You know, some employers look for different things that they place more emphasis on: collaboration, negotiation, people management, how you communicate verbally and written, if you have leadership capabilities. Just depends on what the position is and if those skills are going to help set you up for success in those. Networking. So who's in your network? Anyone that surrounds you, close to you, families, friends, colleagues that you've worked with, professors, people that are in your church, volunteer groups, or anything like that. And questions you should ask: do you know of anyone who might have an opening for a person of my skills? You know, it's okay to ask that question. Do you know of anyone else who might have an opportunity out there? Or is there someone that I should speak to? Do you know someone who has connections and they would be able to help me with my job search? And your responsibilities and actions. So always, always, always provide accurate information on your resume and applications, because at some point during the interview process, there may be a background check where they're trying to validate that information. So as long as you just tell the truth right up front, because you don't have to remember the truth, you have to remember a lie. So just make sure that everything that you put is accurate and up to date. Show up on time for your job interview. Think if you are on time, you are late. So work in a cushion, you know, give yourself plenty of time so you don't feel rushed and you can go in there and present your best self. Be sincere and genuine. Communicate your acceptance or refusal for a job offer as soon as possible, because you never know when you may need to apply for the same company again. So that's just a professional courtesy. Accept a job offer in good faith. It's okay to refuse a job offer as long as you do it professionally. Claim fair reimbursement if an employer agrees to pay for the cost that you incur during the recruitment process. and ask questions if you are not clear of next steps. You know, one of the questions that you may ask at the end of the interview is, you know, I thank you so much for your time, but what can I expect as far as next steps? That's not putting the interviewer on in an awkward position to say, you know, when are you going to give me this job? But it's just saying, what should I expect? Should I expect the email from your resourcing team? Should I expect a call in 7 to 10 business days? You know, it just opens up the conversation to set some clear expectations for both of you. Okay, Jamie, here we are. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jamie, for the closing.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So in closing, we're a little over, so I'll try to make it quick because I want to know if anybody has questions in particular. Understand that job searching can be demanding and it can become frustrating. We know that as individuals ourselves who have to look for jobs, but as well as interviewing so many different people. We get it and we understand it. So it's okay if that happens to you. Just try to overcome it. Make sure that you get the support you need, whether it be from your family or friends. Involve those supportive, positive people in your life when you are in the process of doing this. And I'm sure they will help offer at least one piece of good advice that you can take away with you. Ask for help if you need it. It's okay to ask for help. Do it. It's definitely fine. Be willing to change your strategy if it isn't working. You may have this whole plan set up about how you're going to look for jobs, what you're going to do, which jobs you're going to look for. If it's not working after so long, switch it up. There are career counselors, and most of them have free services within your community, so it's always something good to look into. Don't take rejection personally. Like Camille said, she's been told no. I've been told no multiple times. And it's honestly, it just made me stronger. Sure, I felt pretty bad when it happened, but it just made me even better of a person that I am today. Focus on things that you can control, such as your diet, your attitude, your exercise schedule, and your overall mindset. The more positive you are, the better the experience is going to be, as well as the outcome. There is a job for you at the finish line, so just know that it will happen when the time is right. So for now, yeah, let's open up questions. So in case anyone had any prior engagements as well.
I have a question. Which one of which one?
It would be the functional.
Functional? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we can give you a copy of this too, so you can always reference back to it.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
I have one other question. I don't have a LinkedIn photo, and I went on YouTube and was looking at how to put a resume together, and they said that they prefer a professional looking photo. Well, I don't have a professional photo.
I don't either.
Oh,
Honestly,
okay.
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I just they actually offered that service at Barclays when we were still all at the site.
Okay.
But you don't need one. Just pick a nice poised picture. It could be a selfie, quote unquote, but don't use filters.
Okay.
You want to look as, normal as you would in person. It's okay to smile. You don't want to look miserable in the picture. Just,
Okay.
keep just something professional and respectful for yourself,
Okay.
for your LinkedIn. So you were setting up your LinkedIn, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'll be perfect for your LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
You had mentioned putting your school graduation date, what you accomplished at that school. Now, would indicating the graduation date on your resume open up the applicant to ageism?
It could. And it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to tell everyone and say, interviewing, unfortunately, it's subjective. People are going to judge you. We're judging machines. It happens, unfortunately. If you choose not to put it on there, that's totally fine. But it's also good to show, like, hey, I graduated. Maybe you can put graduated or continuing education. You could put something like that just to explain that you are either done going to school or you're continuing your education. There are a lot of people out there that again, will judge you, but no matter what, that's why we talk about remaining positive, regardless, because unfortunately it happens.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the cover letter.
Sure.
How is the cover letter, is really that important to submit one?
I think it's a mixture of both. So I'll use my personal experiences as an example. When I applied for Barclays, I really wanted the job. So I really wanted to show them that I was interested, and I put in that extra effort to show them who I was or who I am. When I just recently gained the position that I'm in now, I didn't use a cover letter. I was hired internally within Barclays. I didn't deem it necessary, but I did take that time I did get an interview, luckily. I gave them my resume, but after I interviewed, I responded to them in email thanking them for the interview, and kind of used that as my cover letter to deliver to them in that sense. Like, hey, I'm looking forward to it. This is who I am. It really intrigued me about this in the interview when you told me about the position. So I guess really, if you're really passionate about getting that job, I would definitely submit a cover letter.
Right, and some organizations will be very clear on their website when you go to the careers or employment section, where they'll say cover letter not required, or please submit a resume or cover letter with your resume and application. So some organizations will clearly point that out as you're going through the application process. Do what feels right for you, you know, and considering the industry. So like if it's I'm trying to get a job at Target retailer, probably not necessary to have a cover letter, but you know, it's nothing wrong if you do decide to include one. It's just an introduction for yourself.
Okay, some of the sites that I have been doing applications, they say optional, and every time the word optional, I go, I'm not going to do it. So
yeah,
They
it's
gave
optional.
you a choice.
And it's true. They can't judge you, you know, if they said you need to submit a cover letter or it's necessary and you didn't, then yeah, I'm going to pass you up. You didn't read the instructions,
Follow
you didn't follow direction, but it's optional. It's optional. They shouldn't judge you on that.
Thank you so much for answering my questions.
Yeah, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Hi, will you please include your names, titles, and contact information in the chat box if we are able to contact you later with questions?
Yeah, I was actually going to let I'm probably going to pronounce your name wrong. Loremi. Oh, it's close. If Camille's okay with it, I'm totally fine with sharing our emails. I would love to provide this deck to everyone. And then I think I know from my experience, no one's ever really shared a resume with me. I had to figure it all out myself. So I'll share my resume, since I had to recently write one just a couple months ago, as well as the cover letter that I provided to Barclays when I applied for the job. So I'll share that with everyone too.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great. Yeah. So I can email everyone that actually joined this session. Let me do that. I'm gonna take pictures of you guys. Just the names. Don't worry. I'm not trying to keep these pictures, ladies, because a lot of people sign up for the webinars, but not everyone shows up. So I want to make sure that I send it to only the people that were here.
Yeah, and then also I want to add, if you ever have questions or need suggestions, email us and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And your emails will probably come to the top of our inbox because they're coming from outside of Barclays. So it'll be an immediate flag for me. I'll be like, oh, let me check this email out.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions? Cool.
This was great, ladies. Thank you so much. It was amazing. It was very informative. So I think it was just amazing.
Great.
Thank you so much for having us. Jamie, thank you so much asking me to participate. This, you know, I always get excited about girl power opportunities, and when we're able to support each other and being great. And so like this has been, I've been looking forward to this since Jamie told me about it, and I'm just so excited that I've had the opportunity to speak with and share all of this information with you ladies.
Well, thank you. We truly
thank you so much.
No problem. And thank you, ladies, for joining us. I hope everyone has a great weekend. When Jamie sends over that deck, I'll share it with everybody else so that way you guys can have it and use it. And like Jamie and Camille said, I guess if you do have any questions, you know, feel free to reach out to them, I guess, with any questions you might have.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
Well, have a good one, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good weekend.